Have you ever noticed something strange? The women men chase the hardest are rarely the loudest. They aren't the ones sending endless messages. They aren't begging for attention. They aren't trying to prove their worth every single day. Instead, they possess something far more powerful. They know when to stay quiet. They know when to walk away. And somehow, that silence becomes unforgettable. Here's what most people get wrong. Obsession isn't created by chasing someone. Obsession is created by mystery, by emotional discipline, by confidence so quiet that it forces someone to wonder what they're missing. If you've been giving too much, loving too hard, explaining too often, and wondering why he seems less interested, the more available you become. Today's message might completely change how you see relationships, because the truth is simple. The quieter your confidence becomes, the louder your value appears. Let's begin. The first quiet habit is learning to stop explaining everything. Many women believe that if they just explain themselves one more time, he'll finally understand. So they write long paragraphs, they defend every decision, they justify every feeling, they answer questions that were never even asked. But here's what happens. Every explanation slowly teaches someone that your peace depends on their approval. The strongest woman isn't the one with the best argument. She's the one who knows her truth doesn't need permission. When you know who you are, silence becomes enough. You don't argue with people determined to misunderstand you. You don't chase someone who's already walking away. You don't force someone to see your value. You simply continue living like you already know it. And that's when something incredible happens. Instead of wondering why you're talking so much, he starts wondering why you've stopped. Curiosity is far more powerful than persuasion. The second quiet habit is protecting your attention. Attention is today's most expensive currency. Where your attention goes, your emotions follow. Your confidence follows. Your energy follows. Some people spend all day checking if someone viewed their story, checking if they're online, checking if they liked another person's picture, checking, waiting, refreshing, without realizing they've handed control of their happiness to someone else. But the woman who quietly protects her attention creates a different reality. She wakes up focused on her own goals. She invests in her own growth. She laughs with friends. She learns, she builds, she creates. She becomes so busy building a beautiful life that she forgets to chase someone else's validation. Ironically, that's exactly when she becomes unforgettable. Because nothing attracts attention like someone who isn't begging for it. The third quiet habit is refusing to react emotionally to everything. Life will test your emotions. Relationships will test your patience. People will test your boundaries. But emotional maturity isn't about never feeling hurt. It's about choosing your response instead of reacting instantly. Most people react. Few people respond. There's a difference. Reaction comes from fear. Resentment comes from wisdom. Imagine someone ignores your message. One person immediately sends 3 more. Another begins overthinking. Another starts accusing. But the woman who understands her worth simply smiles and continues living her life. Not because she doesn't care, because she refuses to let temporary situation control permanent confidence. Calmness is magnetic, chaos is exhausting. People remember the person who stayed composed when everyone else lost control. The fourth quiet habit is letting actions speak louder than promises. Words are easy. Everyone says they'll change. Everyone says they care. Everyone says forever. But actions reveal character. Instead of telling someone you're loyal, be loyal. Instead of saying you're confident, live confidently. Instead of announcing your value, protect it. Real confidence doesn't introduce itself. It enters the room quietly, and everyone eventually notices. The strongest presence isn't always the loudest. Sometimes it's the person who speaks the least, but means every word. That kind of energy cannot be ignored. The fifth quiet habit is becoming emotionally independent. This doesn't mean you stop loving. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means your happiness no longer depends on another person's mood. If they text, wonderful. If they don't, your day is still beautiful. If they stay, you appreciate them. If they leave, you appreciate yourself enough to continue growing. That's emotional freedom. And freedom is incredibly attractive because desperate energy pushes people away. Peaceful energy draws them closer. People often think obsession comes from giving someone more attention. It doesn't. It comes from becoming someone whose absence creates questions. Someone whose life remains meaningful, whether another person stays or leaves. Here's something few people realize. Confidence isn't loud. Confidence doesn't demand attention. Confidence doesn't compete. Confidence doesn't chase. Confidence simply exists. And because it exists so naturally, people can't stop noticing it. Think about the people you've admired most. Were they constantly trying to impress everyone? Probably not. They seem comfortable with themselves. Comfort creates confidence. Confidence creates mystery. Mystery creates attraction. That's why the woman who quietly invests in herself becomes unforgettable without trying. She reads while others gossip. She heals while others seek revenge. She grows while others complain. She listens more than she speaks. She chooses peace over drama. Every one of those small decisions builds an invisible kind of strength, the kind people can feel before you even say a word. Because energy speaks long before conversation begins. People notice how you carry yourself, how you handle disappointment, how you respect yourself, how you walk away from what no longer serves you. They notice far more than you think. And the woman who masters these quiet habits never has to convince someone she's valuable. Her life becomes the proof. Sometimes the greatest shift in your life begins the moment you stop asking, how do I make him choose me? And start asking, have I chosen myself? That single question changes everything. Because when a woman finally begins choosing herself, her standards become stronger than her fears. She no longer accepts breadcrumbs because she's hungry for love. She no longer mistakes attention for commitment. She no longer confuses chemistry with character. That's where the sixth quiet habit begins. She becomes comfortable with silence. Most people fear silence because silence forces them to face uncertainty. No text, no call, no explanation, just space. And in that space, insecurity starts whispering. Maybe lost interest. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I should reach out first. But the woman who has mastered herself understands something powerful. Silence is information. If someone truly values you, consistency will reveal it. If they don't, silence reveals that too. Either way, silence is serving you. It exposes what endless conversations often hide. Instead of rushing to fill every quiet moment, she allows people to reveal who they really are. Because people always tell you the truth, sometimes with words, but more often through patterns. She watches actions instead of chasing explanations. She notices effort instead of empty promises. She pays attention to consistency instead of potential. And that patience protects her heart. Ironically, the less she fears silence, the more unforgettable her presence becomes, because confidence never panics. It observes, it learns, it decides. The seventh quiet habit is mastering the art of walking away without creating a scene. There is incredible strength in leaving with dignity. No shouting, no insults, no revenge. No desperate attempts to make someone regret losing you. Just quiet acceptance. Many people believe closure comes from one last conversation, one last argument, one last explanation. But real closure rarely comes from another person. It comes from your decision to stop negotiating with what has already shown you the truth. Sometimes walking away is not giving up. It's graduating. Graduating from confusion. Graduating from inconsistency. Graduating from relationships that ask you to shrink just to stay. Every time you quietly leave a situation that no longer honors your value, you send yourself a powerful message. I deserve peace. That message slowly becomes your identity, and identity shapes every future relationship. People respect those who respect themselves, not because they are perfect, but because they refuse to abandon themselves for temporary attention. The eighth quiet habit is keeping your goals bigger than your relationship. Love is beautiful, but it should never become the only thing that defines your life. The happiest people have something they're building beyond romance, a dream, a purpose, a skill, a business, a career, a mission. When your entire world revolves around one person, every small change feels like a crisis. But when your life is full of purpose, love becomes a beautiful addition instead of your only source of meaning. There's something deeply attractive about someone who wakes up excited about their own future. Someone who doesn't need constant entertainment because they're busy creating. Someone whose confidence is built on progress instead of compliments. Imagine meeting two people. One spends every conversation talking about who ignored them. The other talks about what they're building. Who leaves the stronger impression? Purpose changes your energy. It gives your life direction. And direction is magnetic. People are naturally drawn toward those who know where they're going. Not because success is attractive, because certainty is. The ninth quiet habit is guarding yourself fiercely than your feelings. Feelings change, self-respect lasts. There will be moments when your heart tells you to chase, to call again, to lower your standards, to accept less than you deserve, because being alone feels uncomfortable. But self-respect quietly asks a different question. If your best friend were living this story, what would you tell her to do? Suddenly the answer becomes obvious. You would tell her she deserves honesty, consistency, effort, kindness, respect. So why should you accept less for yourself? One of the greatest acts of love isn't finding someone else, it's refusing to betray yourself. Every time you ignore your own boundaries to keep someone around, a small part of your confidence disappears. But every time you honor your standards, even when it's difficult, your confidence grows stronger. That's why self-respect always pays greater rewards than temporary approval. Because approval depends on others. Self-respect depends on you. And the relationship you have with yourself will outlast every other relationship in your life. The 10th quiet habit is becoming impossible to shake because your peace comes from within. This is where everything comes together. Real confidence isn't pretending you never feel pain. It's knowing pain doesn't define you. You may cry. You may miss someone. You may feel disappointed. But deep inside, you still know you'll be okay. That quiet certainty changes the way you love. You stop loving from fear. You start loving from abundance. You stop trying to hold on to people who are determined to leave. You begin making room for those who are excited to stay. Think about that. How much energy have you wasted trying to convince someone to recognize your value? How many nights have you spent replaying conversations that changed nothing? How many mornings have you questioned your worth because someone else failed to appreciate it? Now imagine using all of that energy differently. Imagine investing those hours into becoming wiser, healthier, stronger, calmer. Imagine becoming the kind of woman whose happiness isn't interrupted by another person's inconsistency. That transformation doesn't happen overnight. It happens one quiet decision at a time. One healthy boundary, one moment of self-control, one act of courage, one day where you choose peace over panic. Eventually, those small choices become your personality. Your personality becomes your presence. And your presence becomes unforgettable, because the truth is, obsession isn't created by manipulation. It's created when someone realizes they can no longer find another person who carries themselves the way you do. Someone who knows their worth without announcing it. Someone who gives love without losing themselves. Someone who can walk away with grace instead of bitterness. That kind of woman is rare, and rare things are never easily forgotten. The moment you stop trying to be unforgettable is often the moment you become impossible to forget. That sounds backwards, but life is full of paradoxes. The people who chase attention usually lose it. The people who desperately seek validation rarely feel secure. And the people who quietly build themselves often become the ones everyone remembers. Why? Because genuine confidence doesn't demand to be seen. It naturally stands out. Think about a mountain. It doesn't announce its height. It doesn't compete with the trees around it. It simply stands where it is, day after day, storm after storm, year after year. And because it remains steady, people admire it. Your character should be like that mountain. Steady when emotions try to shake you. Steady when someone praises you. Steady when someone criticizes you. Steady when life becomes uncertain. The strongest people aren't those who never struggle. They're the ones who refuse to let every struggle change who they are. One of the greatest mistakes people make in relationships is believing they have to become someone different to keep another person's attention. They laugh harder than they feel. They hide what bothers them. They pretend to enjoy things they don't enjoy. They lower their standards. They silence their opinions. Little by little, they disappear. Then one day they wonder why they feel empty. The answer is simple. You cannot build a healthy relationship by abandoning yourself. If someone only loves the version of you that's pretending, then they don't truly know you. Real connection begins where performance ends. The right person won't ask you to shrink. They won't ask you to become less ambitious, less confident, less intelligent, less expressive. They'll admire the parts of you that insecure people found intimidating. Never confuse someone else's insecurity with your flaw. Sometimes your light doesn't need to become smaller. Sometimes they simply haven't learned how to appreciate brightness. That's an important difference. Another quiet habit that changes everything is refusing to compete with other women. Comparison is exhausting. There's always someone younger, someone richer, someone more famous, someone with more followers, someone with a different kind of beauty. If your confidence depends on being better than everyone else, you'll never feel secure because there will always be another comparison waiting around the corner. But when your confidence comes from becoming the best version of yourself, comparison loses its power. You stop asking, am I better than her? You start asking, am I growing from who I was yesterday? That's a battle you can actually win. Growth is personal. Confidence is personal. Peace is personal. Stop measuring your journey with someone else's ruler. You have no idea what battles they're fighting behind closed doors. Social media has convinced many people that perfection exists. Perfect relationships, perfect vacations, perfect bodies, perfect love stories. But remember this, people usually post their highlights, not their healing, not their heartbreak, not their sleepless nights, not the tears they cried before smiling for the camera. Don't compare your reality to someone else's edited moments. Protect your mind from unrealistic expectations. The strongest woman isn't trying to impress strangers online. She's trying to become someone she's proud to meet in the mirror every morning. That mirror tells the truth. It knows whether your confidence is real. It knows whether your smile is forced. It knows whether you've kept your promises to yourself. And keeping promises to yourself is one of the fastest ways to build unshakable confidence. Every time you say you'll start tomorrow and don't, your mind remembers. Every time you promise yourself you'll set a boundary, then ignore it. Your mind remembers. Every time you say you'll choose peace, but return to unnecessary drama. Your mind remembers. Trust in yourself is built exactly the same way. Trust is built with another person through consistency. Small promises, repeated daily. Imagine telling yourself, I'm going to protect my peace today, then actually doing it. Imagine saying, I'm not going to chase someone who isn't choosing me, then honoring that promise. Imagine deciding, I'm going to invest 1 hour in becoming better. Then showing up every single day. Those tiny victories create enormous confidence over time. Because confidence isn't something you find. It's something you earn. One decision at a time. One disciplined moment at a time. One courageous choice at a time. People often ask why emotionally healthy individuals seem so attractive. The answer has very little to do with appearance. Healthy people create emotional safety. They're honest, they're consistent, they're calm during conflict, they communicate without manipulation, they apologize when they're wrong, they forgive without becoming foolish, they know the difference between kindness and weakness. That's rare, very rare, and rarity always attracts attention. Don't try to become unforgettable through games. Don't ignore messages just to seem mysterious. Don't pretend not to care when you actually do. Those strategies may attract attention for a moment, but they cannot build lasting respect. Instead, become someone whose peace cannot be purchased, someone whose standards cannot be negotiated, someone whose kindness isn't confused with desperation. There is incredible power in knowing you could chase, but choosing not to. Not because you're playing hard to get, because you've learned your worth doesn't increase by convincing someone else to recognize it. Your value existed long before they noticed it, and it will continue to exist whether they stay or leave. Ride that again in your heart. Your value is not waiting for someone else's approval. It never was. The people who become truly unforgettable understand one final truth. Love should never cost your identity. The moment you're constantly anxious, constantly overthinking, constantly afraid of saying the wrong thing, you're no longer experiencing peace. You're managing fear. Real love doesn't make you feel like you're walking on broken glass every day. It inspires growth, trust, security, freedom. That's the kind of relationship every person deserves, not perfection, but peace. And when you finally experience that kind of peace, you'll wonder why you ever settled for emotional confusion. Because peace feels different. Peace lets you sleep. Peace lets you smile. Peace lets you become more of yourself instead of less. That's the quiet strength that no one can fake. And once you discover it, you never want to lose it again. One day, he'll remember you. Not because you begged him to. Not because you chased him. Not because you kept reminding him of everything you did. He'll remember you because of how you carried yourself. People rarely forget the person who treated themselves with dignity. They rarely forget the one who remained kind without becoming weak. The one who loved deeply without losing themselves. The one who walked away quietly instead of destroying everything on the way out. Time has a strange way of revealing what emotions often hide. When someone has constant access to you, they can begin to take your presence for granted. But when that presence is gone, and they realize your peace wasn't an act, your confidence wasn't a performance, and your kindness wasn't something they could replace overnight, they begin to understand your value differently. Not because you tried to make them miss you, because authenticity is rare. And rare things leave lasting impressions. Many people spend years trying to become irresistible to someone else. But the greatest transformation happens when you become irresistible to your own future. When you wake up every morning with goals that excite you, when you build habits that strengthen you, when you become healthier in your body, calmer in your mind, and stronger in your spirit. When your happiness is no longer waiting for a text message, when your confidence is no longer built on compliments, when your peace is no longer controlled by another person's choices. That is freedom. And freedom changes everything. Imagine looking back 1 year from today. Will you still be chasing someone who isn't choosing you? Or will you be grateful that you finally chose yourself? Every decision you make today becomes the life you'll live tomorrow. Choose wisely. Choose courage over comfort. Choose growth over attachment. Choose self-respect over temporary attention. Choose peace over chaos. Because every time you make one of those choices, you're quietly becoming the kind of person who never has to force love. Love begins finding you. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you become someone who no longer accepts anything less than genuine connection. Remember this. The right person will never need to be convinced to appreciate consistency. The right person won't make you question your worth every single day. The right person won't disappear whenever things become inconvenient. No relationship is perfect. There will be disagreements, misunderstandings, difficult seasons. But healthy love always leaves room for honesty, effort, and mutual respect. It never asks one person to carry the entire relationship alone. If you've been carrying everything by yourself, maybe it's time to put that weight down. You were never meant to earn love by exhausting yourself. Love isn't a prize for overworking. It's a partnership built by two people who are both willing to show up. And if someone refuses to meet you halfway, don't spend your life walking the entire distance alone. One of the strongest things you can ever say is nothing at all. Not because you're angry, not because you're playing games, but because you've realized every battle doesn't deserve your energy, every opinion doesn't deserve your response, every goodbye doesn't deserve another chance. Silence becomes powerful when it's guided by wisdom instead of resentment. There's a difference. One silence is punishment, the other is peace. Choose peace. Always choose peace. As the years pass, people won't remember every message you sent. They won't remember every argument you won. They won't remember every explanation you gave. But they will remember how you made them feel. Did your presence bring calm or chaos? Did your words bring hope or fear? Did your character reflect strength or insecurity? Character is what remains after beauty fades. Character is what survives when emotions change. Character is what creates lasting respect. Build your character more carefully than your image, because image attracts attention. Character earns trust, and trust is far more valuable. So if you're waiting for a sign to stop doubting yourself, this is it. If you're waiting for permission to stop chasing people who keep running, this is it. If you're waiting for the courage to protect your heart without hardening it, this is it. The next chapter of your life doesn't begin when someone finally chooses you. It begins the moment you choose yourself. The moment you decide that your standards matter, that your dreams matter, that your peace matters, that your future matters. Because once you truly believe those things, everything around you begins to change. You stop fearing rejection because you understand rejection is often redirection. You stop fearing loneliness because you've learned to enjoy your own company. You stop fearing endings because you realize every ending creates space for a better beginning. And perhaps the most beautiful part of all, you stop trying to become someone people can't leave. Instead, you become someone who will never leave themselves. That's the quiet habit that changes every relationship you'll ever have. Not manipulation, not mind games, not pretending not to care, but becoming so grounded in your own worth that no disappointment can convince you that you're less valuable than you truly are. So walk with confidence, speak with kindness, protect your peace, honor your boundaries, keep growing when no one is watching, keep believing in yourself when no one applauds, keep becoming stronger, wiser, and calmer every single day. Because the woman who quietly builds herself eventually reaches a place where she no longer worries about who is obsessed with her. She's too busy creating a life. She's obsessed with herself. And that's the greatest secret of all. The moment you stop chasing validation and start building your own extraordinary life, you become the kind of person whose presence cannot be forgotten, whose absence is deeply felt, and whose quiet confidence speaks louder than 1,000 words ever could. So choose yourself, again tomorrow, and again the day after that. Because the strongest love story you will ever write is the one between you and the person you become. And when that story is built on confidence, self-respect, discipline, and peace, you'll never have to chase love again. The right people will recognize your value. The wrong people will reveal themselves. And you will finally understand that your greatest power was never in making someone obsessed with you. It was in becoming someone who was never willing to lose themselves just to keep anyone else.